Well, we are excited to have Asha Bhattacharya on, and she is Miss Anaheim Hills. And I, I assume you got that title from being in beauty, are they called beauty pageants? I don't even know if that's what they're called, but pageants, some sort of pageants and contests. You get the title. And I'm kind of gathering from the little bit that I'm talking to you that there's more to it. But I thought that having you on this show today to talk about teens and body image would be totally perfect because in getting to know you at an event that we were at, I just kind of noticed that they presented you and you were involved in mental health work and you had some more to say. And it quite frankly shocked me. And it was pretty cool to hear. Um, Body image is something that's difficult for adults. It's something that's difficult for teens. We all talk about the teens, and I'm seeing it in littles as well. But today, Asha, I want to focus on teens specifically, and I think you probably have a lot of insight into that. So, um, why don't you start us off? What first of all, tell us about being Miss Anaheim Hills.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I actually met you while I was at an event, as you just said, and that's my favorite part about being a title holder in the Miss America organization. There are a lot of people who rightfully so think that pageants are strictly about beauty and the way that you look, and
Mhm.
it's understandable why people think that. I felt the same exact way before I competed. And I had a friend in high school who was a title holder. She was Miss Placenta's outstanding teen. So I was 17 years old. And one day in math class, she turned to me and she said, we're looking for girls to compete. And I think you would be so good at this. And I said, Ashley, you know me. I'm a nerd. I'm an AP student and
Wow.
I study all the time. And I am not a white blonde girl. And I don't do pageants because that was the preconceived idea that I had. And she said, no, it's nothing like that. Just come to the orientation. Just come to the orientation. And if you don't like it, we never have to talk about it again.
Oh, wow.
So she dragged me to the orientation and I learned that it was a completely different system than what I thought. It's the Miss America organization, which is actually the largest scholarship organization for women in not just the nation, but the world. And I was shocked to hear that.
Hmm.
But if you compete and if you win, you get scholarship money and you have to use that money for scholarship. There's a lot of different pageants out there. The most popular organizations are the Miss USA competition and the Miss America competition. The Miss USA competition, from what I know, is more modeling based. There's a swimsuit competition, and these women are beautiful and stunning. The Miss America competition is first and foremost a scholarship competition.
Mm.
And what I loved was the service aspect of the competition. If you do win a title, you have to promote your community service impact throughout your community. And I said, I love that. I'm so passionate about mental health. I myself have experienced a lot of anxiety in my life, and it's something that I struggled with a lot when I was a teen because I didn't have help and resources yet. So I loved that if I won, I got to promote that. And then I
Okay.
loved the service aspect of it. I loved going out throughout my community. And that's exactly how I met you. And so
Mhm.
I also love that there is no swimsuit competition anymore in the Miss America pageant. They completely got rid of the swimsuit competition because this organization represents and embodies the modern woman. And the modern woman is no longer noted for the way that she looks
Mm.
and what her body has to bring to the table. There is no swimsuit competition, and that's what separates the Miss America pageant.
Okay. And so that's amazing. And I didn't know any of that. And so I
Yeah.
feel very thankful. And I almost hope that that maybe gets discussed more. I had no clue, none of that. And maybe
Yeah.
I'm just totally ignorant, but I appreciate you sharing that with me. And um, it's interesting because I met you at one of the most, in my book, one of the most important mental health events in our community, the With Hope Walk, but there were a group of little kids who ran up to you knowing nothing about mental health, knowing nothing about the service aspect of what you're doing, and were drawn to your beauty, right? Because they started calling you a princess. And
Yeah.
today I want to talk about body image and balance, because if you were somebody who didn't take care of herself, if you were somebody who just cared nothing for nutrition and health, I don't think that your presence would have been such that a whole group of little kids were following you around because they thought that you were a princess.
Mhm.
But your identity was very clearly not in your looks at this event. Your identity was in the work that you're doing to promote mental health awareness and to promote healthy body image. And so it's an interesting balance for me. And I don't think that I don't know, I'm almost nervous to talk about it, right? Because it's almost like we're in this place where we can't talk about the fact that taking care of your body and nutrition and body looks does matter, but we don't want that to be the complete identity. And we'll get into that a little bit. But what's that like for me to point out to you?
It's so true, and I think nothing in life is ever fully black or white. That's something that I've had to learn in my own therapy and learning how to manage my own anxiety. Nothing in this life is ever fully one thing or fully the other thing. Everything is a balance, and I completely agree with you.
I like that. And I love that you're so willing to talk about the fact that you went to therapy or go to therapy for anxiety. And that's interesting too, because I've never seen you anxious. And so
Yeah.
to know which you've clearly overcome, to again have this message that you can give and to have this presence that educates and attracts people in a healthy way is awesome. And kudos to you. Congratulations on being where you're at in your journey. I
Thank
had
you.
another thought. Most of the time, if not every time I've talked about body image, what first comes to my mind is young women, right? And when I hear people talking about it, it's often young women. I mean, who did I bring on to talk about body image? I brought a young woman who's Miss Anaheim Hills, right? But in my practice, I'm seeing equal boys and girls struggling with body image. And I hate to say this, in some ways, I almost think it's worse for boys,
Mhm.
because I am seeing that we've crossed a line where women can talk about it, and they can they have people who are kind of like in their corner, if they have low self-esteem in terms
Yeah.
of their looks. But a boy doesn't necessarily have all of that. When I think of some of the boys who have body image issues, I think of the only person in their corner is their mom, who's telling them they're handsome anyways. And,
Hmm.
I don't know. Have you seen
It's
that?
so sad. I definitely have seen it. I believe it starts at a young age when when young boys get hurt or when their feelings get hurt, either physically, emotionally, they're told, don't be a little girl, suck it up, stop crying. But
Mm,
girls are given the freedom and the permission a bit more to cry and to feel their emotions. And that doesn't change as they become adults. If anything, it actually gets worse. And even if you look at on Instagram comments, right? Girls will post selfies and they'll feel beautiful, and you see all the comments of their girlfriends hyping them up. Oh my gosh, slay, queen, you look so cute, work, I love you. Boys don't get that, right? They don't get that assurance. And I have a
mm,
lot of guy friends who have opened up to me and have talked to me about it. And they've admitted, you know what? It's really hard. It's really hard not having assurance. And they actually love when somebody tells them, hey, man, you look really good today. It'll make their day the same way
yeah,
that it makes,
yeah,
my day.
yeah, yeah. As you're talking about that, a few things came to mind. Number one, you're to, you're right. Unless you are this completely all-star athlete who's also ripped, you don't get that much assurances. And then I realized there's two um populations we're talking about. We're talking about people who have body dysmorphia, and that's they don't see what everybody else sees, and they have body image issues because there's truly something wrong in the way that they are perceiving themselves. It's not accurate. For instance, if somebody feels they're fat when they're clearly not fat. And then we have people who don't have the ideal bodies, and they might even be overweight, severely overweight, or they might
Mhm.
have things that don't aesthetically look pleasing to the average person, right? And so I think, and this, I get myself into trouble all the time, because right now I believe that people are just talking about it as though it's all the same issue. Body image issue is the same thing. And in fact, I hear people come in and say, I have body dysmorphia. And I asked him, who told you that? Well, my last therapist said, I have body dysmorphia. And I said, well, what do you see that's not there? And, when they're clearly severely overweight and they're saying that somebody's telling them they have body dysmorphia, and then I've got to be the therapist to help them decipher that and find identity outside of their fitness. But it becomes hard because no, I don't think anybody's having that conversation, that we can't just call it all body image issues, body dysmorphia. Sometimes what you're seeing is not aesthetically pleasing, and how do you find self-esteem in spite of that? Sometimes we're dealing with a clinical diagnosis and an issue where the person is not seeing what's actually there,
Mhm.
and what they see and what their mind processes is not fact. What's that like to hear me say? And I'm a little worried, but uh,
It's the truth, and it's like I said earlier, there is no black or white. It's such a nuanced thing to talk about, and everybody experiences it differently. Everybody goes through it differently. For me, growing up, have felt it, but it has gone even deeper than that. A lot of it for me too is about my skin color. And I saw when I was
ooh,
younger, I actually grew up believing that I was black because I lived in a very white community. And
uh,
my parents never even discussed race with me because they felt it's not important. You're young. Like, why should we even have to talk about this? And so
yeah.
I grew up, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I watched a documentary on it on the first time, and I looked at myself and compared myself to the other people around me, and I said,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm black." And I'm not, right? But that just goes to show from a young age,
Yeah.
you're conditioned to, number one, you want to look like the people around you. Number two,
Hmm.
you want to look like what the media is telling you, this is what's beautiful. And at the time when I was 7, 8 years old, I saw a lot of thin, white, skinny, blonde, blue-eyed girls
Hmm.
in the media, and think Hillary Duff era, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank God a lot of that is changing now, and there has been more diversity brought up. But I say that just to further solidify the point that the experience is different for everybody, and
Yeah.
nobody has the same thoughts and emotions as they go through it.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing what your ethnicity is with everybody?
Yeah, yeah, I'm Indian. Both of my parents were born in India, and I was born here in Orange County, native
Okay.
Orange Countyan.
Okay. And the culture of your parents, has that affected? You said that they didn't really talk ethnicity or color with you. Are there other ways that it's affected body image perception or your ability to process what you're thinking or feeling or experiencing?
Yeah,
Did culture play a role at all?
absolutely. I felt such a conflict of culture as I was growing up. I really wanted to be like every other kid, and I don't think that that's abnormal. And so I wished that when I invited my friends over, my house didn't smell like curry. I wished it smelled like whatever their house smelled like. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
being so conscious of my mom's and my dad's accents, and I wish that they didn't have that. Probably the most interesting thing
Wow.
was I've called my dad Bubba my whole life because
Mhm.
Bubba is what I call my dad in
Mhm.
Indian dialect, right?
That's different.
And when my friends would come over, I wouldn't call my dad Bubba. I would call
Oh,
him dad.
interesting.
And it was the most
Hmm.
I've never felt like I've betrayed myself in my life more than in that moment.
Oh, wow.
To completely let go of your identity because you feel that you need to be something other than what you
Hmm.
are. And it's been a big thing that I've had to work on as I've healed is, you know, wanting the love of other people stems truly from feeling that you authentically as Asha are not is not enough. And
Yeah.
so it started from a really, really young age. And I'm so happy to say that now at the age of 24, I gladly at an event as Miss Anaheim Hills, my dad came as my chaperone one day and I screamed across the event, "Hey, Bubba, can you
Oh,
take my
wow.
picture?" And it was such a beautiful moment. And when my friends come to my house now and they smell that Indian smell, I said, "Let me tell you what we just made. You have to try it."
Yeah.
Right. So it can change. And I'm really glad that it has.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And such, that's one of those pieces that nobody's talking about or would say. The fact that what you call your dad was something you had to be conscious of, let alone
Yeah.
anxious about,
Mm-hmm.
is really mind blowing. And you mentioned, you said that you let go of your identity completely. And I'm going to be a therapist right now, and I'm going to suggest that you did not let go of your identity completely. You tried to build on your identity as somebody who has friends.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you tried something out, but you notice where you ended up. You ended up embracing all of your identity. And so remember
Right.
that. And I want all teens, any parents to remember we're on a journey. And when I hear somebody say that they completely betrayed themselves, they didn't. You were on a journey. Let that go. Don't let that be a source of guilt. Let it be just an acknowledgement of the journey you were on to find the identity you're in now.
I love that. What a beautiful way to think about it, right? And it's funny too because now as I compete, we all have our own talent that we have to
Mhm.
to show. And I am doing a comedic monologue about my family.
Oh,
And so I talk about the humorous cultural elements of me being an American girl growing up in an Indian family. Because it's so funny, a lot of times people ask me, what are you? And I'm just like, I'm American. I eat American food. I don't speak any Indian languages, which is unfortunate. I think as as I grew up, my parents were very conscious of wanting me to learn English first. And
mm.
my mom actually told me it's because she didn't want me to have troubles at school.
Oh,
She didn't want me to
interesting.
feel embarrassed if I had a slip up and couldn't remember the English word because I
Right.
remembered the different word for it. And it breaks my heart that that's the thought process she had.
Hmm.
But I understand that it was a decision made completely out of love and protection.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's a sad decision to have to
Yeah.
make. And so I did have a lot of confusion growing up about what am I? I always felt so conflicted when people asked me that question. What are you? Where are you from?
Yeah.
I thought, I'm American. Can't you see? I talk like you. I speak like you. I eat like you. I
Yeah.
dress like you. What are you talking about? And so I found the humor in that though. And because I think a lot of us go through that in
Hmm.
some way or another. And so that's actually my talent for
I like
the
it.
pageant is I build on that humor and I mimic my parents'
Cool.
accents and it's a lot of
You know,
fun.
we live in a time where a lot of people are not going to accept that. And we're trying to be so politically correct. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that they get, like you were talking about, there's a balance. Being able to find humor in things that are difficult, that maybe aren't right, being able to find the humor in it opens up a way to talk about it without it being taboo. And I'm sorry, but nothing heals if it can't be on the table without being taboo. If
Yeah.
you're scared to talk about it, if you're scared to express it, healing does not come. And I think there's a balance because you don't want to cross that line into being inappropriately mean or insensitive. But I love that's your talent. You keep just surprising me. I love getting to know you and kind of your mission and what you're doing in the world. Um, I had a I had a couple things here written down that I wanted to get to, and the So a couple, we kind of covered this, but just telling teens that body image doesn't matter is, in my mind, total BS. It's not going to work. You can't just tell a child, hey, it doesn't matter. We've got to acknowledge, hey, it does matter for some things, and that pain that you're feeling is real, and I can't fix that for you. And then, and that's especially for somebody who is not struggling with body dysmorphia. They're struggling with actual body issues, or
Mhm.
you said skin. I work with a lot of teens who have severe acne, and you can't tell them, hey, it doesn't matter, because guess what, it does matter. And some people do make fun of them, and some do it not to be mean, they just do it because they don't think it's a big deal. And it does matter, and they go through great lengths to try to change it. But
Mhm.
I think that if we keep this message up that, oh, just don't worry about it, it doesn't matter, or we lie to them, oh, no, 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 you're not overweight, you're fine. There's got to be that balance of
Right.
honesty,
Mhm.
empathy and care and love, and then also um, directing elsewhere. Because in my mind, the issue is sometimes body dysmorphia. The issue is sometimes we got to find, figure out what's going on. Sometimes you got to figure out what can be changed with what you have an issue with, what can't be. Is it healthy to change it? Is it not healthy to change it? And I can't make that decision for everybody, but I mean, sometimes it's cosmetic, sometimes it's something else. And we got to know where the lines are better, rather than just lumping everything together into one pot. But to me, I think that we need to not change the conversation, but grow the conversation
Mhm.
and make it more honest, less taboo. But
Mhm.
while we make things less taboo, we also have to bring in more empathy and more care at the same time. Any thoughts on that? Again, this is one of those thoughts that has seriously gotten me in trouble before.
That's wild. It's wild that that's gotten you in trouble, but I think it makes sense because of what you just said. We are human beings that care a lot about efficiency, and we just want to solve problems fast, right? Nope, it's a problem, I don't want to deal with it. So what's the easiest way to make a problem go away? Oh, it's not that bad, don't worry about it. Stop freaking
Yeah.
out about it. But all that does is it's just a form of non-acceptance. And what I've learned
Yes. Ooh, I like that.
in my own healing journey is that non-acceptance only creates more suffering. And whatever feeling you have is valid. There is no such thing as a feeling or an emotion that is not valid, because that
Right.
feeling and that emotion is true for you and is true for your own experience.
Right.
So to say, oh my gosh, I feel fat, but I'm just being dramatic, I just need to stop,
Mhm.
that's a form of non-acceptance. And you
I
are
like that.
going to continue suffering, because that feeling of being unhappy about your weight is not going to go away. And on top of that, you're adding suffering because now you feel guilty for feeling bad. So that's the biggest thing I've had to learn in my own experience with my own mental health. I used to get really mad that I was anxious. Asha, you have such a wonderful life. Just stop being anxious. Well, guess what? The anxiety never went away.
Right.
And on top of that, I was just suffering because I was feeling bad about being anxious. So,
Yeah.
number one, if you have a feeling, it's always valid. No
Yes.
ands, ifs, or buts about that.
Yeah.
Number two, uh, let yourself be comfortable with the uncomfortableness.
Nice.
I think a lot of people, and myself included, would label emotions as good or bad.
Yeah.
There is no good or bad, right? But we think that feelings of unhappiness, of insecurity, of fear are bad emotions.
Right.
No, they're not. They're actually extremely healthy emotions. And I love the word emotion because it's rooted in the word motion, right?
Mhm.
Emotions play an evolutionary, they're really important evolutionarily speaking. They are supposed to give you cues about what to do next.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling fearful, your body is trying to give you a cue of you need to take action. So
Sure.
accept this feeling and now take action. And so let's talk about body image. If you, as you mentioned, balance, maybe you feel that you are overweight, you don't feel good, you feel sluggish. if you are trying to shove away this emotion of not feeling good about who you are and you don't accept it, you don't take the time to accept the unhappiness, then you are
Mm-hmm.
also then pushing away your body's cue of trying to tell you, hey, Asha, what's the motion that we're going to take now? Is this a cue for us to build a more active lifestyle? Is this a cue for us to pay better attention to the nutrition that we have and what we're feeding our
Right.
body with? Right.
Right.
So, really, my biggest advice to everybody and to me as I say this is
Mm-hmm.
listen to your body and don't shrug away your emotions because your
Good.
body is trying to
That's
communicate to
so
you
good.
about the next course of action.
That is so good. And I love a couple things. Number one, I tell my clients all the time, you are not going to change if you don't get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when we talk about body image, we don't like to talk about change for some reason, other than just, I'm going to feel good about the thing that I don't feel good about. But sometimes the way to feel good is to improve something. Sometimes the way to feel good is to admit that your mind is lying to you about that thing.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a little bit of both. And it reminds me, you were talking about your skin. It reminds me of when I was little. Um, I live in Orange County, right on the cusp of Villa Park. And everybody was like, and there's been several movie stars and athletes that came out. I just happened to grow up at a time that everybody was a superstar. And I was not very athletic. And I actually grew up thinking that I was fat. And I was called fat often. I actually had, I remember when I was in school, they would grab my love handles. And so I I thought that I was fat growing up. And so I had kind of shared that with my significant other. And we were talking about it, and she had an opportunity to see some pictures of me. And she said, I thought you said that you were fat when you were younger. And I said, well, I was. And she goes, no, you weren't. And I'm looking at these pictures going, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Now, if I had my shirt off, I had some rolls, but I wasn't fat. I was a little pudgy, but I was a water polo player. I was athletic enough to play sports, but I wasn't a superstar. I went on to become pretty athletic and ended up getting a scholarship for sports, which I could barely like throw a baseball when I was younger. But my point being, it was so interesting to me for her to say that, because the reality was, yeah, she's right. From an adult's perspective, I was not, but back then I thought that I was. But there's another piece to that. Um, I am I have a little fat boy that lives inside of me that loves food. I love to cook. I come home from work and I stand in front of the fridge, and 8 times out of 10, I eat when I'm not hungry, and I battle working out and battle trying to eat healthy, and then I don't eat healthy, and then I eat healthy, and then I don't. Sometimes I don't love my stomach, sometimes I don't. But I'm not a fat person, but I am somebody who does want to work on my health and continue to work on my health. And a part of that is how I look. But that's not all of it. I've got a daughter. I want to be able to play and everything else. But I'm not going to ignore that there is a vain piece to me that wants to look good, but
For
that
sure.
can't become the entirety of why I take care of my body. That can't become
Right.
my obsession and my full identity. And that's something that I want to touch on briefly before we end here. And that's that I think that there's a few things going on that maybe we can bring to the conversation from now on for people. Number one is, let's have a more honest conversation. Let's have a more honest conversation. The teens have a more honest conversation. Let parents have a more honest conversation. The people, the mental health professionals, let's be more honest about all aspects. The fact that there's, like you said, nuanced issues going on. They're not all the same issues.
Mhm.
Let's be honest about how the role of acceptance plays. Let's be honest about what you were talking about. You know, how if you aren't honest about just kind of where you're coming from and what you want to work on, and that's not like isn't the everything, but it's a lot of the thing, then if we pretend like it's just oh yeah, just shove it away, like you said, just push it away. That's not an issue. Let's just pretend like that's not an issue. That's not being honest. It is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love that you said, let's be honest about the feelings we're having and not make them something that, like you said, that you didn't use this word, but minimize. We can't minimize them and say, oh, I shouldn't be having that thing. No, you might be having that feeling. I love the tie that you said. You said you might be having that feeling because it is telling you that there's some work to be done. There's
Yeah.
some growth to be had. But then on
Mm-hmm.
the other end, let's not let these things get out of control and become uncontrollable insecurities. And like you, I don't think insecurities are necessarily bad. Sometimes they are that cue. Is that the word you used? Cue
Yeah.
to focus on something and let it
Yeah.
be a conversation that isn't taboo. I want to get
Yeah.
rid of that because as we talk more about mental health, I'm noticing that it's some things that were taboo are not taboo, but we're creating other things that are taboo. And then we've got this. I find myself being an old school therapist going, oh no, I don't know what to talk about when and how. And oh, am I going to tick somebody off right now? So
No, I agree. And also just know that nobody has it figured out. You could
no,
look at
good.
me and say, "Oh my gosh, she's Miss Anaheim Hills." But oh my gosh, I also totally struggle with how I look, it's not this ever-present feeling that I have all the time, but I absolutely will look in the mirror sometimes and be like, "Oh, I look a little pudgy," or "Oh, I hate the
Mm,
way my hair looks."
yes.
That's so normal, and you could be the most beautiful person ever and you're still going to have those thoughts because you are human. So
Yeah.
even though we all don't vocalize that, that's very, very normal. I also want to say that so much of what you see on social media is going to affect the way that you feel. And I found this
Yes.
person on Instagram that I do want to share with you all. I don't even know this person, but I found her on my feed one day, and she has changed my life. Her
Mm.
name is Bree Bree Lenahan, and she posts these wonderful photos of what Instagram captures of her, and she's got this beautiful body. And then you slide, and then the next slide is reality, and
Oh, interesting. I've
it shows
seen
all of
stuff
her
like that.
roles.
Oh,
And
wow.
every single post that she does is Instagram versus reality. It's the same exact person, the same location, the same outfit. It's just showing that what you see on Instagram
Isn't real.
is not real.
Yeah.
It's curated, and you're sucking in, and you've got a filter, and you've got an edit. And then the next slide is the exact same thing, just real life. And
Yes.
that, I want everybody to remember that what you see on social media is somebody's highlight reel. They have taken 50 photos and they've chosen one photo that they like, that they think they look good in that one exact angle. I
Yes.
know because I do it all the time. I go to all of these events as Miss Anaheim Hills, and we take hundreds of photos, and I find the one that
The
I
one that you
like. I'm
like.
like,
Yes.
my hair looks so good, my body looks so great. Of course I
Yeah.
do that. Like, don't we
Yes.
all, right?
Yeah.
And so really just remember that everybody's got roles, everybody has got some pudge on them. Totally normal. I remind myself that I like to work out because I feel good mentally.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the benefit of looking great is, absolutely, I want that. Absolutely,
Yes.
I want to look great. Who doesn't? But I started working out because I wanted to look good. And then I kept working out because it felt good.
I like
I
that.
wouldn't have, yeah,
Yes.
I wouldn't have kept working out if it didn't feel good for me mentally. I started eating healthy because I wanted to look good. I kept eating healthy because it feels good. And I'm not
Yes.
gonna lie, last night I totally binge ate banana chips from Trader Joe's, corn chips from Trader Joe's, and I had like 4 cupcakes from Trader Joe's. I'm a big
Wow.
Trader Joe's fan.
Trader Joe's is
I
amazing.
was
Those corn
love
chips are
it.
ridiculous.
So good, so good. And I did it because I had a 15-hour day at my work, and I was so stressed, and I
Yeah.
emotionally ate. And that's super hard to admit, but you got to admit these things in order to be real and
Yes.
honest with
Yeah.
yourself.
I
So I
I
admit it
agree.
openly and honestly on this podcast. It's super embarrassing to talk about,
Yeah.
but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And I feel disgusting today because I had no nutrients in my body, right?
Mm.
I had no nutrients yesterday. I had a bunch of starches and fat, and now I feel lethargic. And all it did was just remind me, hey girl, you gotta eat some veggies, not to look skinny, but because you don't feel good.
Yes. I
So
like
pay
that.
attention to that.
Yeah.
it's hard because you want to look good, but
Yeah.
to engage in exercise and in healthy eating is not sustainable if you don't focus on the way that you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I am with you. As I mentioned earlier, my nighttime eating gets out of hand. And um, the important thing is, again, it does what you eat does change how you look, and you're going to look better some days, worse some days. And again, I want to give everybody permission to keep focusing on that, because I don't like the split we have. We have the people that only focus on how you look, and then the people who say it doesn't matter. And I want to tell everybody, like you, it's a balance, and it's okay to want to look better, but it's more important to want to feel better. And once
Mhm.
you have a kid, I have a 4-year-old daughter, you really need to work out and eat well, because they get exhausting, and you got to get down on the ground, and you got to be able to throw them in the air if you want to be the cool dad. Um, and so there becomes all these moments in life where health becomes really important, and health does affect your image. Now, there are some things we talked about today that I guess you can technically change, but not in a healthy way. Your skin color, deformities. You can't change your biology, right? We all have different metabolisms. I will never be the soccer skinny model looking dude. I'm just a big dude. Every time I go somewhere, people go, "Man, you're kind of big." Yeah, I know. And I've had periods in my life where I wish I could be that skinny, ripped dude, and it's just not me.
Right.
And but I can be athletic, and I can be healthy, and I can look my best. But
Yeah. And the idea of what looks good is always changing in the media
it
too. I think
is sure.
15 years ago, it was skinny, small, white, blonde girl. And now it is thick, big butt. Thankfully, we're embracing women of color, but isn't that interesting now how it continuously is changing
It
what
is.
is
There's this
considered beautiful?
yeah, it's this sociological pendulum.
Yeah.
We in society like extremes, and now
Yeah.
we're the pendulum's swinging another way, and it's good. And then it's going to get to a point that we need it to go back to balance, and we just got to ride those things out and try to hang on to what is actually healthy and good and right. And um, when you were talking about social media and the other thing I want to say, the app, this not app, I'm so bad at social media. I call everything apps. What is it? It's a page,
Instagram.
this
Oh, yeah.
Instagram page where, and I've seen these where they show what it looks like and then show what the reality is. And so I wanted to say the message right now for social media is all about do it less, do it less, do it less. And I don't know any teams that's actually being followed. Right, that message isn't working. And it
Mhm.
reminds me of back in the day when we said, this is your brain on drugs, and show an egg in a frying pan. And that didn't help anybody. That during that time, actually, drug use increased. And so um, I agree with everybody that we need to reduce social media and all electronics, period. However, that message isn't helping people get healthier. And I don't know that overall that's going to happen. I actually think that it's going to increase just because of the way society is going.
I
But
think you have to use social media for you, right? And that you can make the algorithm work for you, actually. So I started following more of these
and
types of
then you got
accounts.
okay,
And now, yes, and now all
yes,
I see on my Instagram is body love, self acceptance, mental
yes,
health acceptance. And it's actually like a form of therapy now on social
yes.
media, but it's because you kind of have to make that algorithm work.
That is exactly what my point was going to be. I wonder if we just somewhat let go of this idea of telling teens to stop using their Instagram and decrease their social media, and start encouraging them to look at different things. I love how you put it. You put it better than I could have. I wasn't going to say it this way, but I like that. Make the algorithm work in a healthier way for you.
Mhm.
Let's you and I start that message and see what happens. Let's see if we're more influential and helping people get healthier by saying, make the algorithm work in a healthy way for you
Hashtag make the
rather than
algorithm work for you. Let's get
exactly.
that trending,
There you
everybody.
go.
Hashtag make the algorithm
I
work for
love
you.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because this whole message of trying to get kids to stop and reduce sometimes works, but most of the time it doesn't. And I
Yeah.
think my hope is we just find ways to increase self-esteem and mental health and happiness. And I don't
Yes.
care how we get there. I don't want my old adult brain to get in the way of finding a way to help people get there, right? And so I'm going to start that with you. You and I are going to. I barely know how to do a hashtag, so you'll help me. But um, we'll figure that out. Any other just kind of last messages or a message that you have for teens out there specifically?
Yeah, I want to say that being a teenager is one of the hardest things. It
Hmm.
really is. And it's interesting, everybody says, oh, kid, just wait till you get into the real world. Well,
Yeah,
are they not already in the real world? Of course you
yeah,
are. And you're
sure.
actually, something my dad told me that I love is he said, being a teenager is really hard because you're dealing with emotions for the first time.
That's good.
You're dealing with comparison for the first time. You're dealing with
Mm,
friendship breakups for the first time. You're dealing with crushes for the first time. And there
yeah.
is no, you don't have any guidance, right? But as you are
Hmm.
an adult, you're like, oh, I've been through this before, and it's a little bit
Yes.
easier. And I just want to say that you are so not alone. And I remember being so nervous about who to sit with when I was a teen in high school. That was my biggest anxiety every day. Who do I sit with at lunch?
I
And
remember
I
that.
remember,
Oof.
yeah, I even remember going when I finished an exam in school, you have to walk up in front of the class and give the teacher your exam. I would get intense anxiety every time I did that because I thought, how does my hair look? How do my clothes look? Who's looking at me?
Sure.
Being a teenager is so hard, and I just want to remind everybody, regardless of your age, to give yourself grace
Hmm.
and to honor your emotions and know that everybody deals with insecurity. I deal with it. My favorite artist, Taylor Swift, deals with it. She has a whole documentary about how she was fat shamed and how she had
Wow.
an eating disorder. And we look at people who we think are so beautiful and have the perfect lives, and they deal with it too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you do not feel alone in it.
Wow. That I could not have ended this podcast in a better way. I thank you for what you're doing in the community. I am grateful for being able to meet you in a way that even opened my mind up to meeting you. I'm going to be honest. I never would have talked to you. I would have
I
even thought
know.
about it. I would have seen the Miss Anaheim Hills sash and went, oh, okay, cool, and walked on. I never would have thought about it. But I think that your message and who you are, your identity, and being almost, a soldier for mental health is spot on. It's something that my center that we are always looking for people who aren't just soldiers for mental health in the corny, obvious way that all the trends are going, but are willing to help change things and keep it within the parameters of hard, healthy growth conversations, not
Mhm.
trendy, I'm just riding the wave type conversations. And I am so glad you're out there. You are changing lives and you're going to continue to change lives. And I can't wait to just kind of follow what you do in the community. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.